Hello, my wonderfully drowsy time travelers, my fellow lovers of slow, moving history and stories that melt your mind into dreams. Before we begin our journey to the distant past, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If these sleepy stories help you drift off, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us create more content to lull restless minds to sleep. And if you're feeling extra cozy, leave us a comment about how long you lasted before dozing off. We love reading your experiences. Now, find your most comfortable position, let your eyelids grow heavy, and allow my voice to guide you into relaxation. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast, untouched wilderness. The air is crisp, untouched by smoke or industry, carrying only the scent of damp earth and wild herbs. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. There are no cities here, no roads, no signs of modern life. Just rolling hills, dense forests, and the quiet hum of nature. This is the Stone Age, a time before kings, before laws, before the idea of government even existed. And yet somehow people lived together. They shared food, resolved conflicts, made decisions that affected the entire group. How? Without leaders, without written rules, without any of the structures we take for granted today. Let's step quietly into this ancient world, where the rules were unwritten but deeply understood. Imagine a small band of early humans, perhaps 20 or 30 people, gathered around a flickering fire as the evening cools the air. The flames dance, casting gentle light on their faces. There is no chief here, no council, no one person with the authority to command the others. And yet, they must decide it. Where will they hunt tomorrow? Should they move to a new campsite? What happens if someone takes more than their share of food? In our modern world, we rely on laws, on leaders, on systems that tell us what to do. But in the Stone Age, things were different. Decisions emerged slowly, like the turning of the seasons. Someone might speak, suggestion, an observation, and others would listen. There was no hurry, no pressure to decide quickly. Voices rose and fell like the wind through the trees, and over time, a consensus would form. It wasn't about power. It wasn't about who spoke loudest. It was about survival, about the unspoken understanding that every person's well-being mattered. Think of how peaceful that must have been. No politicians, no arguments over laws, no complicated systems of control, just people talking, listening, finding their way forward together. Of course, it wasn't perfect. Disagreements happened. But even then, the solution wasn't punishment or force. It was often as simple as walking away, finding another group to live with. In a world with so much space, so few people, conflict could dissolve like mist in the morning sun. As you sink deeper into relaxation, let your mind wander into this quiet, unhurried way of life. No meetings, no deadlines, no bureaucracy. Just human voices murmuring around a fire, blending with the crackling of burning wood. The distant call of an owl. The decisions they made were small, slow, and deeply connected to the land around them. And now, as your breathing slows and your thoughts grow softer, you can almost feel that simplicity wrapping around you like a warm hide blanket now. Let us drift deeper into this ancient way of life, where every choice was woven into the fabric of survival. Imagine the soft murmur of voices around that fire, the way hands gesture slowly to illustrate a point, the long pauses between words as people consider what has been said. There is no rush here, no ticking clock, just the patient rhythm of collective thinking, as natural as the flow of a lazy river. One of the elders, not a ruler, just someone who has lived many seasons, might speak of the migrating deer herds spotted near the northern valley. A younger hunter, his fingers idly tracing patterns in the dirt, might add that the rains have made the southern marshes difficult to cross. A mother nursing her child could mention the abundance of wild nuts in the eastern grove. No one interrupts. No one argues. Each piece of information settles into the group's awareness, like a leaf floating onto still water. And then, slowly, the decision forms. Not because someone declared it, but because the truth of it simply emerges undeniable. They will go to the northern valley, not because one person demanded it, but because the land itself has whispered the answer. The wind carries the scent of deer. The birds fly in that direction. Even the way the grass bends seems to point north. In this world, choices are not forced. They are discovered, like finding a smooth stone in a shallow stream. But what if someone disagrees? What if a hunter believes the southern marshes, though difficult, hold bigger game? Here, we see the quiet beauty of Stone Age harmony. No votes are taken, no sides are drawn. Instead, the group might split for a time, some heading north, others south, and later they would share what they found. Knowledge, not power, settles debates. If the southern hunters return empty-handed next time, more will listen to the elders' words. If they bring back a great bounty, the group adapts. There are no losers, only lessons learned under the open sky. Even justice was gentle in this world without laws. If a person took more than their share, there were no prisons, no punishments. Only the weight of eyes turning toward them, the unspoken disappointment of the group. Often, that was enough. Shame was a stronger deterrent than any threat, and if conflict could not be mended, the troubled person might choose to walk away, joining another band where the air between them was clear. In a world so vast, exile was not a death sentence, just a new beginning beneath different trees. As you listen to the crackle of this imagined fire, let your muscles relax further. Feel how light it must have been to live without the burden of rigid rules. To know that your voice mattered, not because of your status, but simply because you were part of the whole. The fire burns lower now. The night insects sing. And the last waking thought you might hold is this: perhaps we in our modern world have not invented better ways to decide, only louder ones. Now, as the embers of our imaginary fire glow faintly in the dark, let us wander even further into this ancient mindset, where every decision was as much a part of nature as the growth of trees or the flow of rivers. Close your eyes and picture the stars above our Stone Age group, countless pinpricks of light in a sky untouched by artificial glow. Those same stars witnessed the quiet wisdom of people who understood balance in ways we've long forgotten. Imagine a day when the group faces something rare, a true dilemma. Perhaps a sickness has spread, or food is scarcer than usual. There is no council to demand answers, no emergency protocols. Only people sitting together, their breaths visible in the chilly dawn air, listening to the land for guidance. The oldest woman, her hair streaked with gray, recalls a time when her own mother spoke of similar hardships. She begins to hum, a low, soothing sound, as if the melody itself could loosen them out of their troubles. Others join in, not with words at first, but with sounds that rise and fall like the terrain around them. This is how they think together, not through debate, but through a kind of shared rhythm, as if their very breaths are lining. When the humming fades, a hunter suggests moving toward the setting sun, where a distant lake never runs dry. A younger woman, cradling a sleeping child, reminds them of the steep cliffs along that path. The conversation meanders like a shallow stream, touching on memories, dreams, even the behavior of ants near their campsite. Everything is connected. A child's observation about birds avoiding a certain valley might carry as much weight as an elder's warning. In this world, wisdom isn't measured by age or strength, but by attention. Those who notice subtle things, the way moss grows thicker on one side of trees, or how a fox's den sits empty too long, hold pieces of the puzzle. And then, something remarkable happens. Without a single command, preparations begin. Some gather tools, others pack dried meat and medicinal herbs. The decision wasn't made. It simply became as inevitable as dawn. No one protests, because each person had a hand in shaping it. This is the secret modern minds struggle to grasp. When everyone is heard, resistance melts like frost in sunlight. As night deepens, consider how different this is from our world of deadlines and hierarchies. No one in this ancient circle felt powerless. No one carried the lonely burden of absolute leadership. Even mistakes were shared, their lessons woven into stories told by future fires. A failed hunt became a tale about reading animal tracks more carefully. A harsh winter transformed into a lesson about storing food in new ways. Every challenge was met not with blame, but with collective memory. A living, breathing library of survival. Now, let your breathing match the slow cadence of these long ago people. In and out, just as they inhaled the scent of pine before a storm, exhaled worries into the vastness of the night. There's a comfort in knowing that for tens of thousands of years, humans found their way this gently. Through listening, through patience, through trusting that answers would come like wildflowers after rain. Perhaps, as sleep pulls at your consciousness, you can still hear the echo of their voices. Not arguing, not persuading, just adding threads to an endless, unspoken conversation beneath the stars. As we sink deeper into the velvet embrace of night, let's explore the most fascinating mystery of all, how these ancient decision-making ways still whisper within us today. Picture yourself not around a fire now, but in your own bed, your heartbeat slowing to match the timeless rhythm of human connection that began so long ago. That feeling when you just know what a friend is thinking without words. That quiet understanding when a family gathers and decisions seem to make themselves. These are echoes from our Stone Age ancestors, remnants of a time when survival depended on reading unspoken signals as clearly as we now read street signs. Imagine one particular night in that ancient camp, when something extraordinary happened, the first glimmer of what we might call tradition. A young mother, her hands calloused from gathering roots, notices how her child calms when she hums a certain series of notes. Night after night, she repeats this melody until others begin to recognize it too. One evening, when tensions rise about whether to stay or move camp, someone starts humming those same notes. Almost magically, shoulders relax, brows unfurrow. No one decreed this song as important. Its power grew naturally, like vines on an oak, until it became part of their shared language. This is how culture was born, not through proclamation, but through countless small moments of understanding that accumulated like layers of sediment, forming the bedrock of human connection. Consider how they passed knowledge across generations without writing, an elder tracing hunting paths in the dirt with a stick as children watch intently. A woman showing her granddaughter how to test berries for ripeness by the way they smell after rain. These weren't lessons in our modern sense, but living moments where wisdom flowed as naturally as water downhill. When the time came for decisions, this accumulated knowledge surfaced in subtle ways. A hunter remembering his uncle's story about drought years, a weaver recalling which valleys had the strongest reeds. Modern neuroscience tells us our brains still store information best through stories and sensory experiences, just as they did around those ancient fires. Now shift your imagination to the changing seasons, how these rhythms guided decisions more surely than any calendar. When the first maple leaves showed red edges, the group knew to begin storing nuts. When geese flew in certain formations, they prepared for movement. Their entire existence was a continuous conversation with the environment, each decision arising from countless observations woven together. A child's sneeze near certain flowers became next year's avoidance of that meadow in spring. A bear's unexpected aggression taught them to camp farther from berry patches in autumn. Every experience, no matter how small, became part of their collective decision-making tapestry. As sleep draws nearer, think of how peaceful it must have been to trust in this natural wisdom. No anxiety about making the perfect choice, because perfection didn't exist, only adaptation. No guilt over mistakes, because every outcome taught something valuable. When they moved camp and found barren land, it wasn't failure but knowledge gained. When a new route proved successful, it became another thread in their shared understanding. Their entire existence was a never-ending, gently unfolding conversation with the world around them and with each other. Feel your own thoughts beginning to flow this way now, unhurried, unforced, like water finding its level. The tensions of modern decision, making the rush, the uncertainty, the burden of responsibility, all these melt away as we reconnect with that ancient rhythm. In this half-dream state, you can almost hear the distant murmur of voices across time, all those generations who came before us. Their wisdom whispering that answers come not through force, but through patient attention. That the best choices emerge when we stop pushing and start listening to our surroundings, to each other. To that quiet voice within that knows more than we realize. As your breathing slows and sleep pulls you under, remember, you carry this ancient gift in your very bones, this ability to find your way not through control, but through connection. As the last embers of our imaginary fire glow like distant stars in the dark, let us contemplate the most profound lesson these ancient people can teach us about decision-making, the art of silent knowing. Picture this scene from 30,000 years ago. The first light of dawn creeping over a misty valley where our ancestors are waking. There's no shouting, no hurried commands, just the quiet sounds of people moving in harmony with the new day. Someone stretches and rubs sleep from their eyes. Another checks the bindings on a stone tool. A mother nurses her baby while watching the sky. No meetings are called, no agenda set. Yet somehow, Everyone seems to understand what needs to be done today. This is the forgotten magic of intuitive decision-making, where choices emerged from shared experience and unspokening like mushrooms after autumn rain. Imagine how they developed this profound connection over generations. A hunter learns to read subtle changes in animal behavior, not through instruction, but by spending countless hours motionless in the grass. His breathing slowed, his senses sharpened until he can feel the deer's presence before seeing it. A gatherer knows exactly when roots are ready to harvest, not by calendar, but by the way the earth feels beneath her fingers and how the plant stems bend in her palm. This deep, embodied knowledge was their true decision-making tool, a far more reliable than any rule or leader. When the group faced choices, these quiet experts didn't need to argue their points. They simply shared what their senses told them, and the right path often became clear as morning fog burning away in sunlight. Now transport yourself to a pivotal moment in their yearly cycle, the time when they must decide whether to cross the great river before winter or remain on this side. Modern minds would make lists of pros and cons, calculate risks, perhaps vote. But our ancestors did something different. For days, various members would visit the riverbank at different times. The oldest woman would taste the water and watch how it swirled around rocks. The strongest swimmers would test currents in various spots. Children would observe animal tracks leading to and from the shore. All this information would circulate through casual conversations around the fire, in shared silences during meals, through gestures and observations exchanged while working. The decision would crystallize gradually, like ice forming on a still pond, until one morning the entire group simply knew, today we cross. Consider how they handled dissent in such systems. When a young man insisted the group should head toward the mountains rather than follow the usual migration route, he wasn't punished or ignored. Instead, the elders encouraged him to share his vision in detail around the evening fire. As he spoke of strange rock formations and unusual animal signs he'd observed, others began remembering similar oddities they'd noticed but dismissed. The group's collective memory surfaced stories of past elders who spoke of mountain resources. Within a few nights, what began as one person's stubborn idea became a shared exploration of new possibilities. This was their genius, the ability to transform conflict into discovery, to weave individual insights into group wisdom without force or hierarchy. As you drift closer to sleep, notice how your own mind begins working in these ancient ways. Problems that seemed unsolvable by daylight now reveal unexpected solutions. Creative connections form effortlessly. This is no accident, it's your Stone Age heritage surfacing. That part of you that still knows how to decide through patient observation and trust in unconscious wisdom. In our modern world of instant choices and endless options, we've forgotten how much knowledge lives in our bones, in our dreams, in the quiet spaces between thoughts. The people around that long ago fire understood that big decisions often need time to ripen like fruit on a branch, that rushing leads to mistakes, that true knowing comes not from frantic analysis, but from calm attention to the world within and around us. Let this understanding soothe you now as sleep's current carries you away. Your breathing slows like the measured speech of elders around the fire. Your thoughts settle like dust in a sunbeam. And somewhere deep beneath your modern mind, that ancient decision maker still lives patient, observant, wise. It knows when to act and when to wait, how to read subtle signs others miss, when to speak and when to listen. As you surrender to rest tonight, you're not just sleeping, you're returning, if only for a few hours, to that older, quieter way of being human, where all good decisions begin with stillness and end with harmony. The night has grown deep around our imaginary fire now, the flames reduced to a warm glow that dances faint shadows across resting faces. This is the hour when the most profound truths often surface, when the boundary between waking and dreaming blurs, and ancient wisdom whispers through the cracks of our modern minds. Let me tell you about the moonlit councils of our ancestors, those rare nights when decisions of true significance emerged not through discussion, but through shared silence. Picture this: after days of debate about whether to abandon a longtime campsite, the group falls unusually quiet. No more arguments are made. No more points are raised. They simply sit together watching the moon rise, listening to the night sounds, feeling the earth beneath them. And in that collective stillness, the answer comes not in words, but in a gradual, unshakable certainty that settles over them all like morning dew. This was their most sophisticated decision, making technology the sacred space of communal silence. Imagine how this practice developed over generations. Early humans noticed that after heavy rains, the clearest water didn't come the turbulent streams, but from quiet pools where sediment had settled. They applied this same understanding to their minds. When facing important choices, they would first stir up all the information, every opinion, every memory, every concern, and then allow time for everything to settle. The elders taught that truth, like clean water, becomes visible only in stillness. A hunter might spend 3 days sitting near a game trail before deciding where to place his snares. Gatherers would pause for long moments with their hands in the soil, letting the land speak to them before harvesting. Even children learned that immediate reactions often led to mistakes, while patience revealed better paths. Now transport yourself to one of their most crucial annual decisions, choosing the winter campsite. This wasn't done through debate or dominance, but through what we might call dream weaving. For weeks beforehand, people would share their dreams each morning around the breakfast fire. One woman dreams of a cave behind a waterfall. A man sees white stones forming an arrow shape in his sleep. Children describe visions of a valley where deer eat from their hands. At first, these seem like random nighttime images, but as more dreams are shared, patterns emerge. The waterfall cave matches an elder's childhood memory of a perfect shelter. The white stones resemble quartz deposits known to mark good flint sources. The Deer Valley aligns with the migration route described in old stories. Piece by piece, the winter destination reveals itself through this tapestry of dreams and memories, until the entire group feels pulled toward a specific location, as inevitably as salmon returning to their birth streams. Consider how they handled the most difficult decisions, times of drought or conflict. Modern leaders might rely on data or force their will, but our ancestors had a different approach. They would declare a time of watching, where normal activities paused. For 3 days, no hunting occurred, no tools were made, no major gatherings held. People moved quietly through their days, observing everything with fresh attention, how the insects behaved, where shadows fell at different hours, which animals appeared unexpectedly. They believed solutions didn't need to be created, only noticed that the world was constantly offering guidance if they cultivated the patience to receive it. Often by the 3rd day, what had seemed an impossible dilemma would resolve with startling simplicity, as if the answer had been waiting all along for them to quiet down enough to see it. As sleep's tide pulls you deeper, notice how your own mind begins working in these ancient ways. That fleeting thought about a childhood home, the sudden memory of an old song, the inexplicable sense that you should call a friend tomorrow. These are the whispers of your inner Stone Age decision maker. In our fast-paced world, we've been trained to override these subtle signals in favor of logic and speed. But around that fading fire of our imagination, we remember another way. A way where time is an ally rather than an enemy, where uncertainty is sacred ground rather than something to fear, where the best choices don't come from thinking harder, but from listening deeper. Let your breathing match the rhythm. Those long, go-go people now, slow, even, trusting. With each exhale, release the modern notion that you must always know the answers immediately. With each inhale, draw in the ancient wisdom that some truths unfold only in their own time. The night insects sing the same song they sang 30,000 years ago. The stars overhead are the same ones that witnessed countless generations finding their way through patient attention. And you, lying here between waking and dreaming, are remembering what your bones never forgot: how to decide by listening, how to choose by attuning, how to find your path, not by pushing forward blindly, but by standing still and letting the way reveal itself. The fire has burned low now, its embers pulsing like a slow heartbeat in the darkness. And this is when the deepest truths often emerge, in these threshold moments between light and shadow, between waking and sleep. Let me tell you about the most sacred decision-making ritual of our ancestors, one that modern science is only beginning to understand. Picture a small band of early humans sitting in a circle as night falls, but this is no ordinary gathering. Each person holds a smooth stone warmed by the fire, their fingers tracing invisible patterns as they prepare for what we might call the weighing of hearts. This wasn't about arguments or persuasion, but about accessing a deeper layer of collective wisdom that flowed beneath words like underground rivers. As the first stars appear, the eldest woman begins what we'd now call a guided meditation, though to them it was simply listening to the night wind. She speaks softly, describing the decision before them, perhaps whether to welcome strangers into the group, a choice that could mean life or death in those sparse times. But instead of debating pros and cons, she guides them to imagine each possibility in vivid sensory detail. Feel the weight of extra hands gathering wood, she murmurs. Smell the scent of unfamiliar herbs on their clothing. Hear the new laughter around our fire. Then, after a long pause, feel the tightness in your chest when food runs low. See the questioning looks of children when portions grow small. Hear the silence where new stories might have been. The ritual continues this way for hours, with people occasionally sharing physical sensations that arise, a flutter in the stomach at one scenario, a strange warmth in the hands at another. By dawn, their choice emerges not from logic alone, but from the accumulated wisdom of 60,000 years of human instinct encoded in their very cells. Imagine how this practice evolved over generations. Early humans discovered that certain decisions made their bodies feel light and energized, while others caused subtle tension or unease, what we now call somatic markers. They developed elaborate rituals to access this bodily wisdom, often spending days preparing through fasting, chanting, or repetitive tasks like grinding grain. The rhythmic motion quieted the thinking mind, allowing deeper knowing to surface. A hunter might spend hours polishing a spear point before finally receiving clarity about which valley to explore. Gatherers would weave baskets in meditative silence until the right harvesting grounds called to them through tingling palms or quickened breath. Even children learned to pay attention to how their bodies reacted to different choices, what made them feel hollow like a rotten log versus solid like an oak. Now transport yourself to their most profound annual ritual, what we might translate as the remembering of the bones. As winter solstice approached, the entire group would enter what looked like a collective trance state. For 3 days and nights, they would retell their most significant stories, while gently rocking in unison, a practice modern researchers now recognize as bilateral stimulation. The rhythm activated both brain hemispheres, while the stories surfaced unconscious patterns. A tale about the time they ignored storm warnings and nearly starved might be followed by one about trusting a child's strange dream that led them to safety. As the stories wove together, their shared wisdom crystallized into guiding principles more powerful than any written law. By the ritual's end, everyone knew without being told which old ways to keep and which to release, like trees naturally shedding dead branches in autumn winds. Consider how they handled moral dilemmas that would stump modern ethicists. When a member repeatedly endangered the group but was beloved by all, they didn't resort to punishment or exile. Instead, they would declare a time of mirrors, where for one lunar cycle, every person would reflect the troublesome one's behavior back to them through subtle mimicry. The chatterer found everyone repeating his words until he felt the exhaustion of constant noise. The hoarder saw others stockpiling absurd items until the ridiculousness became obvious. This gentle correction allowed change to come from within, rather than being forced from outside, what they called the way rain shapes stone, not by force but by persistent kindness. As you hover now between waking and dreaming, notice how your own body holds ancient wisdom. That tightness in your chest when you've made a poor choice, the expansive feeling when you're on the right path. These are your Stone Age decision-making tools still functioning beneath layers of modern noise. The people around that fading fire knew something we've forgotten, that the human organism is designed to navigate complexity not through spreadsheets and analysis paralysis, but through subtle sensations and symbolic dreams. They trusted that big answers would come when needed, like deer stepping into a clearing at dusk. Let your breathing slow to match the rhythm of their rocking ritual now. And out, each cycle washing away another layer of overthinking. The night air carries the same molecules their lungs once breathed. The darkness holds the same potential for insight they once revered. And as sleep finally claims you, remember this last gift from our ancestors, that some decisions aren't meant to be made, but to be received, not conquered through willpower. but welcomed like old friends returning home after long journeys. As the last embers of our fire dissolve into pale ash, let me take you deeper still into the moonlit world of our ancestors' decision, making wisdom to the sacred space where individual consciousness blurred into what they called the Great Mind. Picture this scene from 15,000 years ago. The entire clan has gathered in a cave illuminated only by the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi collected by the children and arranged in spiraling patterns on the stone floor. They are preparing for what we might call a dream council, but to them was simply following the dear path of sleep. Tonight is special. They must decide whether to undertake a dangerous migration across the frozen riverlands to reach rumored fertile valleys beyond. But instead of debating, they engage in a ritual modern science would only come to understand millennia later. They are synchronizing their brainwaves before sleep. The oldest storyteller begins what sounds like a simple tale about a wounded caribou leading its herd to hidden pastures. But the rhythm of her words follows precise patterns, a cadence matching theta brainwave frequencies. As she speaks, others join in with humming tones that vibrate at specific harmonics, their voices bouncing off cave walls to create standing waves of sound. Children nestle between adults, their quick minds serving as receptors for group intuition. The sick and elderly are placed at the center, their life experience acting as stabilizing forces. For hours they continue the sonic tapestry until breathing aligns. Heartbeats synchronize, and something extraordinary begins to happen. Their individual minds start functioning as a single cognitive organism, what neuroscientists now call hinterbrain synchrony. In this state, they don't make decisions, they perceive them. The answer about the migration doesn't come through words, but as a shared vision that surfaces simultaneously in multiple dreams. A young hunter, a nursing mother, and the elder storyteller will all wake describing the same vivid images. A white bear standing by a cleft in distant mountains, the scent of unusual herbs on the wind, the feeling of smooth stones beneath their feet. These synchronized dreams form a map more reliable than any conscious planning could produce. Modern research confirms what they knew instinctively, that groups sleeping in close proximity after shared rituals often dream similar themes, accessing collective wisdom beyond any individual's knowledge. Imagine how this practice evolved over generations. Early humans noticed that after certain rituals, their dreams became strangely aligned. A hunter would dream of a specific valley, only to find three others had envisioned the same location. A child's nightmare about falling would coincide with another's dream of crumbling cliffs, warning the group away from dangerous terrain. They developed elaborate dream incubation techniques, sleeping on particular hides, arranging bedding in specific patterns, even using carefully timed doses of mild psychoactive plants to gently open the gates of shared consciousness. The healthiest groups weren't those with the strongest leaders, but those with the most attuned dream synchrony. Now transport yourself to their most profound mystery, the bone memory, rituals conducted at sacred sites. When facing decisions that would affect generations, they would handle the carefully preserved bones of ancestors while in trance states, believing wisdom could transmit across time through physical remains. Modern epigenetics reveals they weren't entirely wrong. Trauma and wisdom do leave molecular marks on DNA that can influence descendants. As they chanted with ancestral bones in hand, they accessed more than metaphor. They tapped into actual genetic memories of survival strategies, encoded in their very cells. A shiver down the spine when considering one path might represent an ancestor's warning from 30 generations past, while sudden warmth in the chest could signal approval from the collective dead. As you drift at the edge of sleep now, feel how your modern mind still holds this capacity. That inexplicable knowing when a friend is in trouble miles away, the déjà vu that hints at unseen patterns, the dream that later comes true in startling detail. These are glimpses of your innate Stone Age consciousness. The people around that ghostly fire understood something we're only rediscovering, that humans are designed to function as neural nodes in a vast thinking network, that separation is an illusion, and that the best choices often come not from solitary analysis, but from surrendering to the flow of collective wisdom. Let your breathing match the slow rhythm of their cave chanting now. With each exhale, release the modern myth of the lone decision maker. With each inhale, draw in the ancient truth of interconnected minds. The boundaries between you and those long ago people grow thin in this moonlit hour. Their wisdom pulses in your bloodstream, their memories whisper in your bones, their way of knowing waits patiently beneath your busy thoughts. And as sleep finally carries you across that frozen river of time, you'll discover what they always knew, that no one ever decides alone, that every choice is made by countless generations, standing shoulder to shoulder in the great dreaming hall of human experience. The first pale light of dawn now creeps across our imaginary campsite, that magical hour when night's mysteries gently dissolve into day's clarity. This was the time our ancestors cherished most for decision, making what they called the breathing space between worlds. Picture them stirring from their sleeping furs, eyes still heavy with dreams, moving through morning routines in quiet synchrony. There's no discussion yet, no analysis of the day's plans. Instead, they engage in what we might call embodied cognition, letting their movements reveal what words cannot. Watch how the woman grinding grain pauses with her hand, hovering over different stones, her fingers seeming to choose the perfect tool of their own accord. See how the hunter testing arrow shafts rejects, one after another until his body relaxes with satisfaction at the right one. These aren't random actions, but the culmination of that night's collective dreaming, the physical manifestation of decisions made beyond conscious thought. Imagine how they refined this practice over generations. Early humans discovered that some choices became clear only through motion, that walking a potential migration route gave more insight than discussing it, that handling tools unlocked knowledge inaccessible through debate. They developed morning rituals specifically designed to think with their hands. Women would weave baskets while contemplating group disputes, the repetitive motions allowing solutions to emerge like patterns in the reeds. Men would chip arrowheads when troubled, finding that the precise strikes required to shape flint somehow also shaped clearer thoughts. Even children participated, arranging colored pebbles in complex patterns that inadvertently mapped out optimal foraging routes. Modern neuroscience confirms what they knew instinctively, that procedural memory at the knowing in your hands often accesses deeper wisdom than declarative memory, the knowing in your head. Now transport yourself to their most sacred decision, making place, the river's edge at dawn. When facing truly momentous choices, they wouldn't gather in council circles, but would instead spend the morning engaged in individual yet interconnected activities along the water's margin. One elder might repair fishing nets, her fingers remembering every knot tied during past successes and failures. A young father could reshape a spear thrower, the wood whispering its perfect form through his calloused palms. Adolescents would skip stones across the shallows, the number of skips and angles of rebound unconsciously revealing water currents and depths. By midday, without a single formal discussion, the group would find themselves moving in unified purpose, some gathering migration supplies, others preparing farewell rituals, because the right path had revealed itself through 73 separate but interconnected acts of manual wisdom. Consider how they handled decisions requiring innovation, something beyond ancestral memory. Modern leaders might brainstorm or consult experts. Our ancestors had a more elegant solution, the Humpty Hans ritual. When confronting completely novel challenges, they would first spend an entire day doing absolutely nothing with their dominant hands. Right-handed individuals would tie their right arms in slings, forcing left-hand use for all tasks. This deliberate clumsiness served multiple purposes. It broke habitual thinking patterns, fostered empathy for different abilities, and most importantly, created a state of childlike openness to new solutions. Often by sunset, someone would have a breakthrough insight while struggling to complete a simple task the wrong way. The group's collective frustration would transform into creative flow, and what had seemed an impossible problem would yield to perspectives only accessible through voluntary vulnerability. As you hover now in this twilight between sleep and waking, notice how your own body holds decision, making wisdom older than civilization. That urge to pace when wrestling with a difficult choice, the way solutions often come while showering or gardening, the inexplicable rightness you feel when certain objects just fit in your hand, these are echoes of our ancestors' embodied wisdom. The people who gathered at that dawn riverbank understood something we've largely forgotten. That intelligence isn't confined to the brain. but is distributed throughout the entire organism, in the knowing hands of craftspeople, the sure feet of pathfinders, the attuned ears of storytellers. Let your muscles relax into this ancient knowing now. Feel how your shoulders remember carrying burdens balanced just so, how your hips recall walking long distances with efficient grace, how your fingers retain ancestral memories of perfect grip and pressure. These are not metaphors, but actual physical wisdom encoded in your very tissues. As the morning birds begin their songs outside your window, the descendants of birds that sang to those Stone Age decision makers, allow yourself to drift back to sleep with this final understanding. Some choices aren't meant to be thought through, but danced into being, not analyzed, but crafted into existence one intuitive movement at a time. The golden morning line now washes over our imagined Stone Age camp, painting the dew-covered grass with fleeting diamonds as we come to the final and most profound secret of ancient decision-making. This is the hour when the veils between worlds grow thin, when the accumulated wisdom of the night merges with the clarity of day, revealing what our ancestors called the path with heart. Watch closely as the clan members begin their most mysterious ritual, what we might term the silent vote, though it bears no resemblance to anything in our modern democracies. No hands are raised, no voices counted. Instead, each person gathers small objects from around the campsite, a particularly smooth stone, a sprig of fragrant sage, a child's carefully carved toy, and places them in a slowly growing pile near the fire pit. To the untrained eye, this appears to be simple tidying, but in truth, it's their most sophisticated decision-making mechanism, a tangible manifestation of group consensus that operates on principles modern psychology is only beginning to fathom. The elder watches the accumulating objects with quiet intensity, her eyes noting which items cluster together, which sit slightly apart. That grouping of white pebbles near the oak leaf, the hunters signaling readiness to pursue the migrating herd, the bundle of medicinal herbs placed deliberately atop a flat baking stone, the gatherers suggesting they remain near known plant sources. No words are exchanged, yet information flows as clearly as if they'd debated for hours. This is the culmination of all their decision-making wisdom, the understanding that when minds are properly attuned, choices can be communicated through the language of objects, through the poetry of placement, through the silent choreography of community. Modern research would later prove what they knew instinctively, that humans possess mirror neurons, allowing intention transmission without verbalization, that groups develop nonverbal communication systems rivaling spoken language in complexity. Imagine how this practice evolved across generations. Early humans noticed that certain objects seemed to gather significance through association. A particular kind of feather always appeared when good hunting was discussed. A type of berry left near someone's sleeping area indicated they dreamed of travel. Over centuries, these associations grew into a rich symbolic language where every pebble, every twig, every worn tool could carry nuanced meaning. Children learned this object speech as naturally as modern kids learn texting. The slight angle of a bone placed on a rock, the intentional spacing between arranged leaves, even the direction a spear point faced when laid down. By the time they reached adulthood, clan members could conduct complex planning sessions without uttering a word, their hands moving objects in patterns as eloquent as any speech. Now witness their most solemn ritual, the making of memory bundles. When facing decisions that would echo across generations, they didn't write pro-con lists or draft treaties. Instead, each person contributed significant items to a leather wrapping. The hunter added a claw from his first kill. The mother included a cord from her birthing harness. The elder placed a fragment of a long, dead ancestor's favorite bowl. These objects weren't random mementos, but physical anchors for ancestral wisdom. As the bundle was tied together and passed hand to hand, each member would close their eyes and listen to what the objects conveyed. Modern science might call this tactile intuition or object-mediated cognition, but to them it was simply asking the bundle. Remarkably, anthropological studies confirm that such ritual objects do help groups access deeper consensus. The physical anchors provide focus while bypassing ego-driven debates. Consider how they handled their most divisive conflicts, situations where even object language failed to create unity. Modern societies might resort to force or majority rule. Our ancestors had a wiser solution: the Humpty Center ritual. They would clear a sacred space exactly in the middle of camp and leave it vacant for 3 days and nights. Anyone could place objects around its edges, but never within. This visible absence acted as a powerful psychological mirror, reflecting back their unresolved tensions. Slowly, inevitably, the empty space would work its magic. Someone might dream of a missing object that belonged in the center. Another might have a vision while staring into the void. By the fourth morning, the solution would often emerge with such clarity that the entire group moved as one. The conflict dissolved like mist in morning sun. As you linger now in this half-waking state, notice how your own home holds fragments of this ancient wisdom. That seashell on your windowsill, the book you keep turning face, down in the same spot, the way your keys always land in that particular bowl. These are unconscious echoes of object-based decision-making. The people around that morning fire understood something we've largely forgotten, that matter remembers. That objects hold energy, that the physical world can think with us if we learn its language. Let your breathing slow to match the rhythm of their morning movements. Now, in and out, each cycle drawing you deeper into embodied wisdom. The boundaries between you and those long-ago decision-makers grow transparent in this golden light. Their knowledge pulses in your fingertips when you touch something and just know it's right. Their memory lives in your sudden urge to rearrange objects before important choices. Their legacy endures every time you trust a gut feeling that has no words but feels as solid as stone. As the final wisps of sleep pull you under, carry this last gift from our ancestors. The understanding that some truths can't be spoken, only held that wisdom often comes not through arguing, but through arranging, and that the best choices sometimes emerge not from loud debate, but from the quiet poetry of objects finding their perfect places. Just as you're now finding yours in the great web of human wisdom, stretching back to that morning campfire and forward into all your tomorrows. The sun has climbed higher in the sky now, casting dappled shadows through the leaves above our imagined Stone Age camp. And it's here we discover perhaps the most unexpected secret of ancient decision, making what modern psychologists might call ambient cognition. But what our ancestors simply knew as listening to the world. Watch closely as the clan members go about their midday activities with what appears to be ordinary focus. Yet beneath the surface flows an extraordinary awareness of their environment's subtle guidance. The woman grinding nuts pauses when a certain bird calls 3 times from the west. The hunter inspecting his arrows notices the way wind patterns suddenly shift and alters his plans accordingly. Even children playing near the stream unconsciously adjust their games based on the water's sound against different stones. This is no mere superstition, it's a sophisticated decision-making system where the environment actively participates in human choices through what we might now call biospheric feedback loops. Imagine how this practice developed over generations. Early humans survived by becoming exquisitely attuned to nature's patterns, not just the obvious ones like changing seasons, but microscopic fluctuations modern technology still struggles to measure. They noticed that deer behaved differently when certain fungi sprouted on oak trees, that fish bit more readily when morning mist clung to the water in particular swirls, that human creativity peaked when certain plants were in bloom. Over centuries, they cultivated this awareness into an intricate science of environmental cues, where every rustle of leaves and cloud formation carried meaningful data. Modern studies confirm astonishing examples: Pacific Islanders detecting distant islands by wave patterns invisible to outsiders, African tribes predicting rains by termite behavior, Inuit elders reading ice thickness through snow's sound underfoot. Our ancestors didn't just live in nature, they thought with it, allowing the living world to guide choices as naturally as we now consult weather apps. Now witness their most profound environmental ritual, the threshold walk. When facing decisions affecting the entire group's future, they didn't retreat into human-only discussions. Instead, they would walk slowly along the borderlands between ecosystems, where forest met grassland, where riverbank gave way to meadow, believing these transitional zones were where the earth's wisdom flowed most freely. As they walked, they noted everything: which flowers bent toward or away from their path, the arrangement of pebbles washed up overnight, even the temperature variations between different patches of shade. Modern ecological science reveals they were right. Ecotones are transition areas between biomes do host exceptional biodiversity and natural energy flows. To our ancestors, these weren't just biological facts but a living language. A sudden flurry of butterfly activity might suggest one migration route, while an unusual rock formation could warn against another. By the walk's end, the decision often felt less like a human choice and more like the land itself whispering its preferences through countless subtle signs. Consider how they handled emergencies requiring instant decisions with no time for discussion. Modern first responders rely on protocols and training. Our ancestors had something more elegant, the mimicry response. When sudden danger appeared, predator, a storm, a landslide, the group wouldn't look to a leader for instructions. Instead, they would instantly mirror the most attuned member's reaction, whether that was a child freezing mid-step or an elder suddenly sniffing the wind. This created a lightning, fast-distributed intelligence network where the most environmentally sensitive person effectively guided everyone. Neuroscience now shows this isn't magical thinking. Humans do synchronize neural activity during shared experiences, and some individuals genuinely detect environmental changes seconds before others. The clan's survival depended on honoring these subtle differences, rather than insisting on equal participation in every decision. As you float now in this liminal space between sleep and waking, notice how your own body still holds this ancient environmental wisdom. That inexplicable urge to cancel plans when the barometric pressure drops, the sudden inspiration that comes during a walk in the woods, the way your skin prickles before a thunderstorm. These are not coincidences, but your innate capacity for biospheric cognition. The people of that sun-dappled camp understood something we're only rediscovering: that human intelligence evolved not as separate from nature, but as an extension of it, that the environment isn't just a backdrop for our decisions, but an active participant in them. Let your breathing sync with the imagined rustle of leaves above that ancient campsite. With each inhale, draw in the knowing that you're never deciding alone. The air, the earth, the water all think with you. With each exhale, release the modern illusion of human separation. The same sunlight that warmed our ancestors' faces now touches yours through your window. The same gravitational forces that guided their intuition still pull at your consciousness. And as sleep gently reclaims you, remember this final truth from those who walked before. The wisest choices aren't made against nature or even with nature, but as nature, because you, like them, remain an inseparable thread in the great living web that has always known the way. As afternoon shadows lengthen across our imagined Stone Age camp, we arrive at the most profound yet often overlooked dimension of ancient decision, making what modern linguists might call the grammar of silence, but what our ancestors understood simply as the spaces between words where true understanding lives. Observe now how the clan members have gradually ceased their individual activities and begun gathering in the dappled shade of the great oak, not for a council or debate as we know it, but for what appears to be a shared stillness. This is their most sophisticated decision-making ritual, one that modern neuroscience is only beginning to comprehend, the practice of a communal contemplation. Unlike our contemporary meetings where voices compete for airtime, here periods of silence hold equal weight to speech, creating a rhythm more akin to breathing than discussion. The elder may speak 3 words, then 20 minutes of quiet follow as those words sink into the collective consciousness like rain into thirsty soil. A young mother might hum a brief melody, and the group sits with that vibration for what we would consider an uncomfortably long time before anyone responds. Imagine how this practice evolved across generations. Early humans discovered that rushing decisions often led to disaster, while allowing time for insights to mature consistently yielded better outcomes. They noticed how a spoken idea transformed when given space, how a suggestion about hunting grounds voiced at dawn might evolve into something richer by dusk, without anyone adding a word, simply through the alchemy of silent group consideration. Over centuries, they developed what we might now call temporal decision architecture, where time itself became an active ingredient in their choices. Modern research validates their intuition. Studies show groups who incorporate deliberate silence in deliberations make more innovative and inclusive decisions, while brain scans reveal our neural activity synchronizes during shared quiet in ways that foster empathy and insight. now witness their most sacred silent ritual, the weighing of the unspoken. When facing decisions affecting generations to come, they wouldn't rush to fill the air with opinions. Instead, they would spend entire days moving about their normal activities while holding the question in shared awareness, what we might call a walking meditation, spanning the whole community. The hunter would carry the decision with him into the forest, noticing how it felt when standing near different trees. The gatherers would let the question settle into their hands as they worked, allowing tactile wisdom to emerge. Children would play games that inadvertently tested aspects of the dilemma. At day's end, they'd reconvene not to debate, but to share what had come to them during these ordinary moments, how the right path suddenly seemed clear when watching water circle a particular rock, how certainty arrived while smelling crushed mint leaves, how insight came in the form of a bird's unexpected flight pattern. These weren't seen as random occurrences, but as the world participating in their decision-making process. Consider how they handled situations where emotions ran high and words might cause damage. Modern conflict resolution relies on controlled dialogue. Our ancestors had something more profound, the silent understanding ritual. When tensions threatened group harmony, they would enter a period of intentional muteness lasting from sunrise to sunset, communicating only through gestures, touch, and shared activities. This wasn't punitive silence but sacred space where the heat of emotion could cool without the fuel of speech. Remarkably, anthropological studies show such practices effectively regulate group dynamics without words to reinforce positions. Neural pathways associated with rigid thinking relax, allowing new perspectives to emerge. Often by nightfall, the original conflict would resolve itself through spontaneous gestures of reconciliation, a shared meal prepared together, an unspoken agreement to split resources differently, children from opposing families falling asleep side by side. As you drift now in this twilight between waking and sleep, notice how your own body remembers these ancient rhythms. That moment when you bite back a harsh word and later realize it wasn't needed, the insight that comes in the shower, when you've stopped trying to force a decision, the way a problem often solves itself when you sleep on it. These are echoes of our ancestors' wisdom about the fertile power of silence. The people gathered beneath that great oak understood something we've largely forgotten, that some truths can't be spoken into existence, but must be allowed to emerge in their own time, that the spaces between words are where understanding grows deepest roots. Let your breathing become the ritual now. Holding, out, holding, mirroring their practice of speech and silence in equal measure. The same air that carried their quiet contemplations now fills your lungs. The same patience that guided their decisions lives in your capacity to wait for clarity. And as sleep finally wraps around you like the softest hide blanket, carry this final gift from those ancient quiet ones. The knowing that your wisest choices may come not from what you decide to do, but from what you allow yourself to hear in the sacred spaces between thoughts, where all true understanding has always lived. The golden hues of sunset now paint the sky above our imagined Stone Age camp, casting long shadows that blend past and present as we explore the most mysterious aspect of ancient decision, making what modern anthropologists might term temporal weaving. But what our ancestors experienced as walking simultaneously in yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Watch carefully as the clan prepares for their evening fire ceremony, moving with a rhythm that defies linear time. The elder isn't just gathering wood for tonight's flames. Her hands remember every fire she's ever built, while her eyes already see the embers of fires yet unlit. The children playing nearby aren't merely occupied with present amusement. Their games unconsciously rehearse survival skills from generations past, while innovating new ones for futures they'll never see. This is no poetic metaphor, but a lived reality. Their decisions emerge from what we might call temporal consensus, where past experience, present need, and future consequence held equal weight in a continuous now. Imagine how this practice developed over millennia. Early humans didn't measure time in hours or years, but in ecological cycles and ancestral memory. They noticed how solutions from generations past often held wisdom for emerging challenges, how preparing for 7 winters ahead required different thinking than surviving this winter, how certain dreams seemed to access knowledge from beyond individual lifespans. Gradually they cultivated what modern psychology might call extended temporal perception, the ability to make choices while consciously holding multiple time frames. A hunter tracking prey would simultaneously walk the paths his grandfather taught him, adjust for today's unusual wind patterns, and consider how his route might affect next season's animal movements. Gatherers would harvest plants while remembering which areas had been picked decades before and leaving enough blossoms for future pollination. Their decisions weren't snap judgments, but intricate braids of strands visible only to those trained in this long seeing. Now observe their most sacred temporal ritual, the bone, breath, and berry ceremony. When facing decisions affecting 7 generations, their standard time frame for consequential choices, they wouldn't rely solely on present circumstances. Instead, they'd assemble 3 symbolic objects: a bone fragment from an ancestor's tool representing past wisdom, a freshly picked sprig of breath, mint embodying present awareness, and an unripe berry from next season's harvest, symbolizing future potential. These would be passed hand to hand around the fire as each person shared not just opinions, but temporal perspectives. What the ancestor's bone whispered, what the mint's sharp scent revealed about immediate needs, what the hard green berry promised about possibilities yet unfolding. Modern futurism studies echo this approach. The most sustainable decisions emerge when we consider multiple time horizons simultaneously, rather than privileging immediate gains. Consider how they handled decisions requiring innovation beyond ancestral knowledge. Modern organizations might conduct brainstorming sessions. Our ancestors had something more profound: the Dream Bridge ritual. They would identify 3 individuals, the oldest member holding most memory, a young adult in their prime, representing present strength, and a child just past infancy, as symbolizing furthest future. These 3 would sleep together in a special hut for 3 nights, their dreams considered messages across time. The elder's dreams often contained warnings from past experiences, the adult's dreams reflected current pressures, while the child's seemingly random visions frequently revealed startling innovations, what we might now call adjacent possible thinking. Remarkably, cross-cultural studies show this practice wasn't uncommon. Many indigenous groups consulted children's dreams for precisely this fresh perspective, unconstrained by conventional wisdom. As you hover now between wakefulness and sleep, notice how your own mind naturally stretches across time when relaxed. That sudden memory of your grandmother's advice when facing a modern problem. The inexplicable certainty about consequences years from now. The way solutions often come when you stop obsessing over immediate details. These are your innate temporal weaving abilities surfacing. The people gathered around that sunset fire understood something we're only rediscovering, that human consciousness isn't meant to be trapped in perpetual present tense, that our greatest wisdom emerges when we allow ourselves to exist simultaneously across multiple time frames like stones in a river, shaped by past currents, grounded in present reality, yet always oriented toward future flow. Let your breathing become the thread connecting these temporal dimensions now, inhaling ancestral wisdom, pausing in present awareness, exhaling toward future possibilities. The same moon that rose over their ceremonial fires now shines through your window. The same timeless intelligence that guided their choices pulses in your blood. And as sleep finally carries you across the boundaries of clock time, remember this final gift from those long, seeing one as your best decisions come not from frantic calculation, but from finding that sweet spot where past, present, and future gently overlap. Like 3 hands on a single stone tool, each applying just enough pressure to shape something enduring for generations yet unborn. The first stars begin to pierce the twilight above our imagined Stone Age camp, their faint light mingling with the dancing fireflies to create a living canopy of flickering points. This is when our ancestors practiced their most profound decision, making ritual what modern astronomers might call celestial navigation for the soul. But what they simply knew is reading the great patterns. Watch closely as the clan gathers in their evening circle, not looking down at the ground as modern people do during meetings, but with heads tilted back, gazing upward in perfect silence. They aren't just stargazing, they're engaging in cosmic consciousness, allowing the infinite expanse above to dissolve their petty individual concerns and reconnect them with the grand design of existence. The Milky Way isn't merely a beautiful sight to them, it's the ultimate decision-making flowchart. its swirling arms demonstrating how small choices ripple outward in ways the human mind can barely comprehend. Imagine how this practice evolved over generations. Early humans spent countless nights studying celestial movements, noticing how certain star patterns coincided with seasonal changes, animal migrations, even human moods. But they went far beyond simple astronomical observation. They developed what we might now call astropsychology, recognizing how different cosmic alignments affected group decision-making capacities. A debate held under a meteor shower often produced more creative solutions. Full moon councils tended toward bold but risky choices. The week after comet sightings was reserved only for routine matters, as people's judgment proved unreliable during such awe-inspiring events. Modern research validates their intuition. Lunar cycles do affect human sleep and behavior, while meteor showers trigger heightened creativity. But our ancestors took this further, using the stars not just as timing devices, but as actual participants in their decision-making process. Now witness their most sacred astral ritual, the constellation weaving. When facing decisions affecting the entire tribe's future, they wouldn't rush to conclusions under daylight's impatient sun. Instead, they'd wait for clear nights when specific constellations were visible, then assign aspects of their dilemma to different star patterns. The hunter might speak while pointing to Orion, connecting their food concerns to the great hunter's position. The elder would relate wisdom traditions to the slow turn of the Big Dipper. Children would be encouraged to find their own patterns in less prominent stars, often revealing surprising perspectives. Over hours of this celestial storytelling, their earthly problem would gradually map itself across the heavens, revealing solutions invisible at ground level. Contemporary complexity science echoes this approach. Visualizing problems in multidimensional space often reveals connections our linear thinking misses. Consider how they handled decisions requiring radical innovation beyond existing knowledge. Modern organizations might hire consultants or conduct research. Our ancestors had something more powerful, the empty sky ritual. They would identify the one night each month when clouds obscured all stars and the moon was dark. On this blind night, no decisions were made, only questions asked aloud into the void. The next clear night, they would study where new stars had risen or old ones disappeared, interpreting these celestial changes as cosmic responses to their queries. Anthropological records show this practice wasn't unique, from Siberian shamans to Polynesian navigators. Many ancient cultures developed sophisticated systems of astral divination that modern science is only beginning to understand. As you drift now between wakefulness and sleep, notice how your own mind expands when gazing at night skies. That sudden clarity about life direction that comes during meteor showers, the profound peace found while moon watching. The way childhood stargazing memories still evoke wonder. These are remnants of your innate cosmic consciousness. The people gathered beneath those ancient skies understood something we've largely forgotten. That we're not just biological creatures, but cosmological ones, that our best thinking happens when we remember our place in the vast stellar tapestry. Let your breathing synchronize with the slow pulse of the universe now, inhaling stardust, exhaling earthly concerns. The same atoms that formed those distant suns now compose your resting body. The same cosmic intelligence that arranged spiral galaxies still whispers through your neural pathways. And as sleep carries you beyond time and space, remember this final gift from the star readers. Your wisest choices come not from narrowing focus, but from expanding perspective. Not by studying life's minutiae, but by occasionally lifting your gaze to the infinite patterns, and realizing every decision you've ever agonized over is both profoundly insignificant and cosmically important in the great, unfolding story written across the night sky. The fire has burned down to glowing embers now, their pulsing light barely illuminating the faces of our imagined Stone Age ancestors as they prepare for sleep. But this is no ordinary bedtime. It's the threshold of their most sophisticated decision-making realm, what modern psychologists might call liminal cognition, but what they knew simply as the dreaming time. Watch how they arrange themselves in a spiral pattern around the fire's remnants, bodies oriented in specific directions according to their roles in tomorrow's planned activities. The hunters point toward anticipated game trails, gatherers face known stands of useful plants. Children curl toward their future selves. This precise arrangement isn't superstition, It's a sophisticated neurological hack, priming their subconscious minds to work on problems through targeted dream incubation. Contemporary sleep science confirms what they intuited: body position, sleep affects memory consolidation and problem solving, while intentional pre-sleep rituals enhance cognitive processing. Imagine how this practice developed over generations. Early humans noticed that certain dreams provided solutions to real-world problems, that sleeping in particular locations yielded more useful visions. That group dreaming sometimes produced shared insights. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call oniric engineering, the deliberate structuring of sleep environments to guide unconscious thought. They learned that sleeping near flowing water stimulated creative dreams, that positioning one's head towards significant landmarks enhanced spatial memory, that certain herbs placed beneath sleeping furs promoted problem-solving visions. Modern research validates these practices. REM sleep does facilitate creative connections. Spatial memory improves when aligned with environmental cues, and some plant compounds genuinely affect dream content. But our ancestors took this further, developing entire decision-making systems that relied on the collective unconscious as their wisest counselor. Now witness their most profound dreaming ritual, the Stone Pillow Council. When facing decisions affecting the entire tribe's survival, selected members would sleep with carefully chosen stones beneath their heads, not for comfort but as dream transmitters. A hunter might use a porous pumice stone to absorb hunting challenges, while a gatherer selected a quartz-veined rock to amplify plant knowledge. The stones weren't mystical objects but tactile focus points, what modern psychology would call priming tools. Upon waking, they'd place these stones in a central basket, then take turns holding them while sharing dreams. Remarkably, consistent patterns often emerged, multiple dreamers seeing similar landscapes, animals behaving in particular ways, recurring symbolic actions. Anthropological records show this practice appeared across continents, from Australian Aboriginal dreamstones to Norse Dram Vidi pillow rituals, suggesting independent discovery of this neurological phenomenon. Consider how they handled crises requiring immediate answers when no time remained for deliberation. Modern leaders might panic or rely on gut instincts. Our ancestors had something more reliable, the Cargent dream technique. The entire group would go to sleep simultaneously, after focusing intensely on the problem, their bodies arranged in a starburst pattern around a central fire. They believed pressing concerns created a kind of psychic tension that would resolve itself in shared dream space. Modern studies of social dreaming confirm their scientific basis for this. Groups sleeping in proximity after shared stress do show remarkable dream convergence, often producing viable solutions upon waking. The fire's warmth, the synchronized breathing, the collective intention, all created ideal conditions for distributed unconscious processing beyond any individual's capability. As you hover now at sleep's threshold yourself, notice how your own mind begins working in these ancient ways. That problem you couldn't solve suddenly clarifying at 3 a.m., the vivid dream that offered unexpected perspective, the morning inspiration that seems to arrive from nowhere. These are your innate uneric wisdom channels, still functioning beneath the noise of modern life. The people settling into their carefully arranged sleeping positions understood something we're only rediscovering, that consciousness isn't confined to waking hours. That some truths only emerge when we surrender active thinking, that the best decisions sometimes come not from effort, but from allowing. Let your breathing sync with the imagined rhythm of those ancient sleepers now. Deep inhalations drawing in the night's wisdom, slow exhalations releasing daytime certainty. The same neural processes that guided their dream journeys now unfold within your resting brain. The same cosmic intelligence that spoke through their visions still whispers in your midnight awakenings. And as sleep finally pulls you under, remember this final gift from the dream. Weavers, your most important choices may not be made through logic or debate at all, but in that sacred space between stars and sunrise, where the oldest, wisest part of you has been solving problems this way for 100,000 years. The first pale light of dawn creeps across the sleeping forms of our imagined Stone Age ancestors, and this is when we discover their most extraordinary decision, making secret of all, what modern science might call hypnopompic wisdom harvesting, but what they knew simply as the voice between sleep and waking. Observe carefully now as they begin staring from their carefully arranged sleeping positions, moving with deliberate slowness to preserve the fragile insights gathered during the night. This transitional state, neither fully asleep nor completely awake, was considered sacred ground for decision-making, a time when dream logic and waking reason could converse like old friends at the world's edge. Modern neuroscience confirms their intuition, the hypnopompic state, those precious minutes upon waking features unique brainwave patterns that foster creative problem-solving. Yet few contemporary societies have preserved rituals to harness this fleeting clarity. Imagine how this practice evolved over generations. Early humans noticed that solutions often came not during active hunting or gathering, nor in deep sleep, but in those amber moments when consciousness first returned. They observed how animals would pause upon waking to assess their environment before moving, a survival strategy hardwired into all mammals. Gradually, they cultivated what we now call liminal intentionality, developing sophisticated methods to pose questions before sleep and harvest answers upon waking. A hunter uncertain about where to hunt would whisper his question to the evening fire, then upon waking, immediately note which direction his body instinctively wanted to face. Gatherers would sleep with seeds in their hands, interpreting how the seeds had rearranged overnight as guidance for harvesting locations. Children were taught to voice their first words upon waking before fully opening their eyes, as these utterances were believed to carry special wisdom. Now witness their most profound morning ritual, the dew mirror practice. When facing decisions requiring absolute clarity, selected members would rise before dawn and position themselves near water sources. As light grew, they'd study how dew formed on particular plants or stones, believing these patterns reflected answers received during dreaming. A spiderweb heavy with droplets might signal abundant game to the west. Dew collecting in leaf veins could indicate the best travel routes. Modern pattern recognition research suggests they weren't entirely wrong. Our brains do detect meaningful configurations in random stimuli, and morning light's angle makes water droplets act as natural prisms, revealing subtle environmental information. The clan's best decisions often emerged not from debate but from comparing these dawn observations. What the hunter saw in the meadow dew, what the elder noticed in tree sap flows, what children reported about insect movements at first light. Consider how they handled decisions where emotions threatened to cloud judgment. Modern people might attempt objectivity or seek outside opinions. Our ancestors had something more elegant, the shadow test. At dawn's first light, the conflicted person would stand with their back to the rising sun, while others observed their shadow's interaction with the environment. Did it merge harmoniously with tree shadows or clash with the landscape? Did morning birds cross the shadow's path without alarm? These subtle signs were considered more reliable than human opinions, as nature's responses couldn't be manipulated by personal bias. Anthropological records show similar practices existed from Africa to the Arctic, using the unbiased natural world as a mirror for human decisions. As you linger now in your own waking threshold, notice how your morning mind works differently than your daytime consciousness. That brilliant idea that evaporates by breakfast, the sudden certainty about a lingering problem. The name you couldn't recall last night now perfectly clear. These are your hypnopompic wisdom channels still functioning, however neglected. The people moving slowly through the dawn misunderstood something we've largely forgotten, that some truths can only be heard in whispers, that the most reliable compass often points clearest when we're not trying so hard to navigate. Let your breathing match the rhythm of their morning movements now. Unhurried inhalations drawing in the day's first gifts, patient exhalations releasing all need for immediate answers. The same neural pathways that guided their dawn wisdom still spark within your slowly waking brain. The same cosmic intelligence that spoke through dew patterns and bird flights still murmurs in your half-remembered dreams. And as full wakefulness claims you, carry this final gift from the threshold dwellers. Your wisest choices may come not from determined analysis, but from attentive receptivity in those sacred moments when night's wisdom hasn't yet yielded to day's demands. When you're not quite here nor there, but perfectly positioned between worlds to hear the universe whisper its secrets. The morning sun now climbs higher in the sky, its warm rays drying the dew from leaves and grass as we enter the most unexpectedly profound phase of ancient decision, making what modern cognitive scientists might term distributed cognition through mundane tasks, but what our ancestors experienced simply as wisdom emerging through ordinary living. Watch carefully as the clan members go about their daily routines, the woman grinding grain with smooth, rhythmic strokes, the man repairing a fishing net with fingers that move almost without conscious thought, children playing a game involving tossed pebbles and laughter. To the untrained eye, this appears to be simple subsistence activity, but in truth it represents the culmination of their decision-making process, the phase where choices settle into bones and muscles, where solutions reveal themselves through the body's quiet wisdom rather than the mind's noisy deliberations. Imagine how this practice developed over generations. Early humans discovered that some decisions couldn't be forced through discussion or debate, but needed to cook slowly in the background of daily life. They noticed how solutions often came while hands were busy with repetitive tasks, how tensions naturally resolved during shared physical work, how children's play frequently revealed simpler approaches to adult problems. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call kinetic intelligence, the understanding that the human body thinks differently when in motion than when sitting still. Modern neuroscience confirms their insight. Activities like walking, weaving, or wood carving activate different neural networks than sedentary thinking, often yielding more creative solutions to complex problems. Now witness their most profound integration ritual, the tasks of alignment. After nights of dreaming and mornings harvesting twilight wisdom, they wouldn't immediately act on their insights. Instead, they would spend an entire day engaged in carefully selected mundane activities designed to let decisions settle into their muscles and bones. The hunter considering a dangerous pursuit might spend hours fashioning arrowheads, allowing his hands to vote through their confidence in each flint strike. The gatherer debating which roots to harvest would weave baskets, noticing which patterns felt strongest as indicators of right timing. Even children participated. Their games of throwing stones at targets actually provided data about wind patterns and terrain that adults incorporated into planning. By day's end, the decision would often announce itself through bodily certainty rather than mental conclusion. A hunter suddenly knowing he was ready, a gatherer feeling perfect certainty about which meadow to visit, the entire group moving into alignment as naturally as geese forming a V for migration. Consider how they handled decisions where intellectual analysis conflicted with gut feelings. Modern leaders might go with data or intuition. Our ancestors had something more nuanced, the body counsel. They would physically act out options using postures and movements, then observe their physiological responses to evaluate a potential campsite. They wouldn't just describe it, they would mimic sleeping there, pretend to build fires, pantomime cooking meals. Those whose bodies remained relaxed during this embodied simulation were considered the most accurate judges, as their somatic responses hadn't been distorted by overthinking. Contemporary somatic psychology confirms the wisdom of this approach. Our bodies often detect dangers and opportunities our conscious minds miss. As you move through your own daily tasks now, whether stretching in bed, making coffee, or preparing for the day, notice how your body holds its own form of knowing. That problem that seemed insoluble last night now feels manageable as your hands busy themselves with routine. The tension in your shoulders that eases when you consider one option over another. The sudden clarity that comes not when you're straining to decide, but when you're occupied with something completely different. These are your ancient kinetic intelligence channels, still functioning beneath your modern overthinking. Let your movements become the ritual now. Each stretch a conversation with your muscles about what they remember. Each step a consultation with your bones about the path ahead. The same body wisdom that guided their hands to shape perfect tools still resides in your fingertips when they instinctively know which key to press or button to turn. The same somatic intelligence that helped them read the land now helps you navigate your world if you'll only pause to notice. And as you fully awaken to your day, carry this final gift from the motion keepers. Some choices aren't meant to be made from the neck up alone, but through the quiet collaboration of your entire being, that magnificent genetic inheritance connecting you to people who knew long before science could explain it, that the body remembers what the mind forgets, and that true wisdom often emerges not in spite of mundane tasks, but precisely through them. Like water finding its level, like seeds knowing which way to grow, like your own breath continuing its perfect rhythm, whether you pay attention or not. The sun now stands at its zenith over our imagined Stone Age camp, casting short shadows as we arrive at the most paradoxical yet powerful aspect of ancient decision, making what modern psychologists might call productive disengagement, but what our ancestors knew simply as the wisdom of doing nothing. Observe carefully as the clan members enter their daily period of intentional inactivity. Sprawling in the dappled shade of broad, leaf trees, some closing their eyes, others staring absently at cloud formations, a few absently running fingers through the soil. This isn't laziness or exhaustion. It's a sophisticated cognitive technology, the deliberate creation of mental space for decisions to ripen like wild fruit on the branch. In our hyper-productive modern world, we've largely forgotten this vital skill, but neuroscience now confirms its power. The brain's default mode network, active during rest, is responsible for our most creative breakthroughs and profound insights. Imagine how this practice evolved over generations. Early humans noticed that constant activity led to poor choices, that the best solutions often came during unexpected pauses, that animals made better survival decisions when they balanced action with stillness. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call strategic idleness, recognizing different qualities of rest for different decisions. After heated debates, they'd practice cooling stillness near water sources. When needing innovation, they'd seek floating rest in hammocks or shallow pools. For moral dilemmas, they chose rooted idleness, sitting against ancient trees. Modern research validates each approach. Water's sight and sound lowers heart rates, floating reduces sensory input to boost creativity, and touching trees measurably reduces stress hormones. But our ancestors took this further, developing an intricate science of purposeful pause that governed their entire decision-making rhythm. Now witness their most profound resting ritual, the cloud watching council. When facing decisions affecting the entire tribe's future, they wouldn't push through with more discussion. Instead, they'd spread out across a grassy hillside and simply watch the sky together for hours, occasionally pointing out cloud shapes that seemed relevant. What sounds like child's play was actually advanced pattern recognition training. The ever-changing clouds provided a neutral screen for projecting subconscious concerns. That cumulus formation resembling a bison might spark thoughts about hunting strategies. Those wispy Ceres fingers could suggest new migration routes. Contemporary psychology confirms the value of such divergent thinking. Exercises, unstructured stimuli like clouds or inkblots activate broader neural networks than focused concentration. By day's end, their decision would often emerge organically from the accumulated observations, refined through nature's gentle metaphors rather than human argument. Consider how they handled decisions where all options seemed equally unappealing. Modern leaders might flip coins or default to the safest choice. Our ancestors had something wiser, the Kumpty hands meditation. They would sit in circles with palms upturned and empty, not reaching for tools or food, not grasping at solutions. This symbolic and physiological state of non-attachment often revealed hidden third options, the path none had seen, because all were too busy clinging to positions. Anthropological records show similar practices across indigenous cultures, from Japanese forest bathing to Native American vision quests, all recognizing that some answers come only when we stop searching. As you lie in bed now, caught between sleep and waking, notice how your modern mind still craves these ancient pauses. That urge to stare out the window when stuck on a problem. The inexplicable clarity that comes during showers or long drives. The way your best ideas arrive when you're not trying. These are your innate rest, wisdom channels begging to be heard. The people lounging beneath those ancient trees understood something we're only rediscovering, that human cognition isn't designed for constant productivity. That strategic disengagement isn't wasted time, but the fertile ground from which all true wisdom grows. Let your breathing become the bridge back to this ancient knowing. Slow inhalations creating space between thoughts. Patient exhalations releasing the modern tyranny of urgency. The same neural pathways that lit up during their cloud watching still spark beneath your daydreams. The same cosmic patience that guided their seasonal rhythms still whispers in your stolen moments of quiet. And as you hover in this precious space between rest and activity, carry this final gift from the masters of productive stillness. Your most important decisions may not come from doing more, but from daring to do less. From remembering that sometimes the wisest action is inaction. The most powerful tool is empty hands, and the clearest answers come not when we chase them, but when we allow them to settle like silt in a still pond, until at last we can see straight through to what was always there. The afternoon sun now bathes our imagined Stone Age camp in golden light, the air humming with insect songs as we discover perhaps the most counterintuitive decision, making wisdom of all, what modern cognitive scientists might term ambient communal cognition, but what our ancestors experienced simply as the intelligence that flows between people when no one is trying to be smart. Watch carefully as the clan members engage in what appears to be casual socializing, sharing food, grooming each other, playing with children, occasionally breaking into spontaneous song or rhythmic clapping. This isn't mere relaxation or bonding. It's a sophisticated neurological synchronization ritual where group decisions emerge not from debate but from the invisible chemistry of aligned minds. Modern research confirms what they intuited. When humans socialize in relaxed, trusting groups, their brainwaves synchronize, heart rates entrain, and collective intelligence emerges that far surpasses individual capabilities. Imagine how this practice developed over generations. Early humans noticed that solutions often came not during formal councils, but around mealtimes, that children's play frequently revealed answers adults missed, that singing together before hunts led to uncanny coordination. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call social neurobiology, recognizing different interaction styles for different decisions. Complex logistical choices benefited from rhythmic activities like grinding grain together. Emotional conflicts resolved best during communal grooming sessions. Creative breakthroughs often emerged from children's games that adults joined as equals. Contemporary studies validate each approach. Rhythmic group activities increase cooperation. Gentle touch releases oxytocin to reduce tensions, and adult-child play stimulates innovative thinking in both generations. But our ancestors took this further, developing an intricate science of social alignment, where decisions arose organically from the group's shared state, rather than any individual's persuasion. Now witness their most profound social ritual, the Clatter decision. When facing dilemmas where logic failed, disputes over resource sharing, debates about fairness, questions of moral ambiguity, they wouldn't resort to rules or punishments. Instead, they'd gather for an evening of intentional humor, with elders telling ridiculous stories, children performing exaggerated imitations of adult behaviors, everyone encouraged to laugh freely. Remarkably, by night's end, what had seemed an insoluble problem would often feel resolved without formal verdict. Modern positive psychology confirms their wisdom. Shared laughter creates neural synchrony that fosters creative conflict resolution, while humor temporarily disrupts rigid thinking patterns that maintain disputes. The clan's secret wasn't avoiding tough choices, but creating the neurochemical conditions where solutions could emerge naturally from realigned relationships. Consider how they handled decisions requiring radical innovation beyond existing knowledge. Modern organizations might conduct brainstorming sessions or hire consultants. Our ancestors had something more organic, the children's court. When truly stuck, adults would present their dilemma to the children at play and observe the games that resulted. A debate about food storage might inspire kids to build imaginative storage huts from sticks that revealed better designs. Uncertainty about migration routes could lead to spontaneous games of explorer that uncovered viable paths. Contemporary education research shows they were onto something. Children's unstructured play demonstrates remarkable problem-solving capacities that adults often lack due to cognitive fixedness. By honoring play as legitimate decision making, they tapped into humanity's most adaptive, future-oriented thinking. As you lie in that delicious state between sleep and waking, notice how your own best social memories hold this ancient wisdom. That family problem that solved itself over a shared meal, the work dilemma that clarified during an office birthday party, the creative breakthrough that came while joking with friends. These weren't accidents, but examples of ambient communal cognition at work. The people laughing around, that ancient fire understood something we're only rediscovering, that human intelligence is fundamentally relational, that the space between minds is where our best thinking happens, and that serious decisions often require not more solemnity but more joy. Let your breathing sync with the imagined rhythm of their communal songs now, inhaling connection, exhaling individuality. The same neural mirroring that aligned their group decisions still operates when you unconsciously match a loved one's posture or finish their sentence. The same collective intelligence that guided their choices still flows whenever humans gather in trust and openness. And as sleep's tide pulls you under once more, carry this final gift from the masters of social wisdom. Your toughest decisions may not require more analysis, but better relationships. Not smarter individuals, but healthier connections. Because the truth is rarely found in any one mind, but in the invisible currents that move between us when we simply enjoy being human together. The sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet as we arrive at the final and most profound lesson from our Stone Age ancestors' decision-making wisdom, what modern philosophers might call the intelligence of surrender, but what they knew simply as letting the path choose you. Observe now as the clan prepares for evening, moving with a quiet certainty that needs no discussion, no debate, no visible decision-making process at all. This isn't mindless routine, but the culmination of all their practices, a state of such deep attunement with each other and their environment that choices emerge as naturally as leaves unfurling in spring. Modern complexity science is just beginning to understand this phenomenon, that highly adaptive systems, from ant colonies to human brains, can exhibit emergent intelligence, where perfect solutions arise spontaneously from simple interactions, no central control required. Imagine how this practice developed over millennia. Early humans survived by becoming exquisitely responsive to subtle patterns, not just the changing seasons but the micro shifts in group dynamics, the barely perceptible signs of approaching weather, the unconscious signals flickering across each other's faces. They noticed that their best decisions often felt less like active choices and more like recognizing what was already true, realizing which migration route the herd had taken rather than picking one arbitrarily, discovering where berries grew sweetest rather than deciding where to search. Gradually they cultivated what we might now call participatory consciousness, releasing the illusion of control to become active participants in a self-organizing universe. Contemporary neuroscience suggests they were onto something profound. Our brains make decisions nearly a second before we're consciously aware of them, implying that what we call choice may actually be recognizing what our deeper wisdom has already set in motion. Now witness their most sacred surrender ritual, the bone casting ceremony. When facing decisions of great consequence with no clear answer, they wouldn't agonize endlessly. Instead, they'd gather around a leather mat where the eldest would cast carved bone pieces onto specially marked hides. This wasn't primitive chance, but sophisticated pattern recognition. The way bones clustered and pointed revealed subconscious knowledge distributed across the group. A hunter might recognize a bone alignment matching game trails he'd noticed but dismissed. Children would often spot connections adults missed. Modern probability theory confirms the wisdom in their approach. Random distributions can surface hidden patterns in complex systems, while group interpretation prevents any single perspective from dominating. By morning, what had seemed like chaos would reveal its order, and decision would feel less like choosing than like remembering something they'd always known but forgotten they knew. Consider how they handled the most agonizing decisions: when to abandon a long-time campsite, whether to risk crossing flooded rivers, how to ration food during famine. Modern leaders might rely on data or intuition. Our ancestors had something more profound: the soul's journey ritual. They believed important choices weren't made in waking life at all, but during dream time when the soul traveled ahead to scout possible futures. For 3 nights, the entire group would focus on the dilemma before sleep, then share dreams upon waking. Remarkably, consistent themes often emerged, certain landscapes appearing repeatedly, animals behaving in specific ways, recurring symbols pointing toward one path. Transpersonal psychology now validates aspects of this practice. Shared dreaming is a documented phenomenon, and many indigenous cultures still use dream incubation for collective problem solving. Their brilliance lay in understanding that some futures can only be sensed, not calculated. As you hover now between sleep and waking, notice how your own deepest choices often feel this way, less like deciding and more like discovering. That career change that suddenly seemed obvious. The relationship that naturally deepened without working at it. The creative project that demanded to be made rather than being consciously planned. These are moments when you touched this ancient wisdom. The people settling around that twilight fire understood something we've largely forgotten, that struggle often signals misalignment, that ease frequently marks truth, and that our greatest purpose may not be to steer our lives, but to listen for where life wants to flow through us. Let your breathing become the final ritual now, each inhale drawing in trust, each exhale releasing control. The same cosmic intelligence that guided their bone patterns still murmurs in your gut feelings. The same dreaming wisdom that scouted their futures speaks in your midnight epiphanies. And as sleep finally carries you across the threshold of conscious choosing, remember this last gift from those who walked before it. Your most important decisions may not be decisions at all, but surrenders. Not efforts of will, but acts of recognition, moments when you stop trying to carve your path and instead become the stream that knows its way to the sea by simply being water. Here, at last, we find the great paradox our ancestors mastered, that true wisdom lies not in choosing well, but in knowing when you don't need to choose at all. When every fiber of your being, every whisper of the world around you, every echo from generations past has already aligned to show the way as clearly as stars guiding night travelers home. Rest now, not as someone who must decide, but as one who only needs to remember. The first stars begin to pierce the twilight as we enter the most mysterious realm of ancient decision, making what modern physicists might call quantum consciousness. But what our ancestors experienced as the moment when all possible paths collapse into one inevitable truth. Watch now as the clan gathers in the deepening blue hour, their faces turned upward not in supplication, but in perfect attention, as if listening to some cosmic whisper, just beyond ordinary hearing. This is their ultimate decision, making ritual the practice of star stepping, where they don't choose between options but align with the version of reality that chooses them. Contemporary quantum biology research hints at the science behind their intuition, that microtubules and brain neurons may interact with quantum fields, that consciousness could function as a probability, collapsing mechanism, that at fundamental levels, the observer shapes the observed. But for these Stone Age sages, it was simply how reality worked. Decisions weren't made so much as recognized, like spotting a familiar face in a crowd. Imagine how this practice evolved over generations. Early humans noticed that some choices felt meant to be, while others required exhausting effort. They observed how animals moved through landscapes with effortless certainty, how plants grew toward light without deliberation, how rivers never debated which way to flow. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call quantum awareness, the ability to sense when a decision point was actually a reality junction. Modern manifestation teachings echo fragments of this wisdom, but our ancestors took it further, developing entire rituals to navigate life's probability waves. A hunter wouldn't just decide which valley to explore, he'd quiet his mind until he could feel the version of himself who'd already succeeded, then follow that version's path. Gatherers didn't choose berry patches, they released into knowing where bounty awaited. Even children learned this through games of hot and cold, played with eyes closed, developing their sensitivity to subtle energetic cues. Now witness their most profound alignment ritual, the mirror of smoke. When facing decisions affecting generations, they'd build a special fire with aromatic woods, then study how the smoke curled upward in the still evening air. Certain patterns indicated strong paths, realities already thick with potential. Wispy, dissipating trails mark weak paths, likely to fade. Modern chaos theory confirms their intuition. Smoke patterns reveal invisible air currents and energy flows that could indeed hint at environmental stability. But our ancestors saw deeper to them. The smoke mirrored the decision's quantum probability field. After hours of silent observation, clan members would often experience shared visions of the strongest path, not as fantasy but as quantum superposition resolving into classical reality. Anthropological records show similar practices across ancient cultures, from Celtic smoke divination to Aboriginal, dreaming tracks, all accessing what quantum physics now calls the implicate order. Consider how they handled decisions where all options seemed equally viable. Modern people might make pro-con lists or flip coins. Our ancestors had something more elegant, the Humpty choice, ritual. They'd prepare two identical sets of sticks, stones or bones, then have a child who knew nothing of the dilemma arrange them randomly. This wasn't chance but quantum observation, the child's unbiased consciousness allowing the optimal reality to emerge unpolluted by adult overthinking. Contemporary double-slit experiments in quantum physics eerily mirror this. Particles behave differently when observed versus unobserved. The clan understood that some choices require releasing the chooser, that the purest decisions happen through us rather than by us. As you float now between sleep and waking, notice how your own life's pivotal moments often felt this way, less like choosing and more like recognizing. That job offer that just felt right. The home you knew was yours before stepping inside, the chance meeting that changed everything. These weren't accidents, but moments when you briefly accessed this ancient quantum awareness. The people gazing upward at those first stars understood something we're only rediscovering, that at fundamental levels, decision-making may be less about willpower and more about resonance, less about effort and more about allowing, less about human choice and more about cosmic choreography. Let your breathing become the quantum field now. Each inhale a superposition of possibilities. Each exhale a collapse into certainty. The same starlight that guided their vision now touches your closed eyelids. The same cosmic intelligence that whispered to them still murmurs in your moments of inexplicable knowing. And as sleep finally carries you beyond the illusion of separation, remember this final gift from the quantum elders. Your most important decisions were never really yours to make. Only yours to recognize when they arrived. Like dawn inevitably following night, like tides predictably answering the moon's call, like your own heartbeat continuing its perfect rhythm without any conscious choice at all. Here, at the quantum crossroads of all possible endings, we find the ultimate truth our ancestors mastered, that you don't need to decide so much as remember. That every choice is really a homecoming, and that the version of you already living your best possible life is simply waiting for you to notice it's been there all along. As close as your next breath, as near as the pulse at your wrist, as inevitable as stars finding their places in the great cosmic pattern. Rest now not as a decider, but as the decision itself unfolding perfectly in time's great dance. The fire has burned down to glowing embers now, their pulsing light barely illuminating the faces of our imagined ancestors as they enter the final stage of their decision, making ritual what modern neuroscientists might call the delta wave revelation, but what these Stone Age sages knew simply means us. Observe how they spiral pattern, radiating outward from the five zones in a spy lengthens a spy de sal pain sal in the dream and dreams us. Bodies aligned along Earth's magnetic fields, hands resting lightly on each other's shoulders to maintain subtle physical connection, even in sleep. This isn't mere slumber, but the most sophisticated decision, making technology of all, a carefully orchestrated descent into collective unconsciousness, where the boundaries between individual minds dissolve, like salt in warm water. Contemporary studies of group sleep patterns reveal the science behind their practice. When humans sleep in close proximity, their brainwaves synchronize, entering shared dream states that often produce remarkably similar visions and solutions upon waking. Imagine how this practice developed over millennia. Early humans noticed that some problems solved themselves overnight, that dreams sometimes carried startling precognition, that groups sleeping together after discussing challenges often woke with aligned understandings. They observed how wolves made hunting decisions through subtle nighttime communications, how migrating birds shared navigation duties and shifts, how even trees seemed to sleep in coordinated rhythms. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call communal aneromancy, the art of shared prophetic dreaming. Modern research is only beginning to catch up. Studies confirm that REM sleep enhances creative problem solving, that groups can develop transpersonal dream connections, and that certain brainwave states allow access to non-local information. But our ancestors built entire decision-making systems around these phenomena, developing rituals to consciously harness the collective unconscious. Now witness their most profound dreaming ritual, the bone bridge. Before sleep, Each member would hold a fragment of bone from a different animal: wolf for strategy, deer for gentleness, bear for strength, owl for vision. These weren't totems but neurological triggers. The tactile memory of different survival instincts encoded in each species remains. As they slept, their interconnected minds would weave these perspectives into a dream council, more wise than any waking discussion. Anthropological evidence suggests this practice was nearly universal, from Siberian shamans to Amazonian healers. Ancient cultures used bone fragments as dream conduits. Modern neurobiology offers clues why. Bones contain mineral structures that interact with electromagnetic fields, potentially creating subtle energy networks between sleepers. By dawn, the group would often wake with a crystalline clarity about their path forward, as if the decision had been made by some greater intelligence working through their united subconscious. Consider how they handled decisions where logic and intuition conflicted. Modern people might agonize in analysis paralysis. Our ancestors had something more elegant: the dream duel. Opposing viewpoints would be assigned to different sleepers, who would spend the night dreaming on behalf of their position. The hunter favoring aggression would dream from the wolf's perspective. The gatherer advocating patience would dream as the tortoise. The elder seeking balance would dream like the owl. Upon waking, they wouldn't debate, but rather share their dreams as sacred stories, allowing the metaphorical wisdom to reveal which path held more life energy. Remarkably, this practice finds echoes in modern conflict resolution techniques that use role, playing, and perspective taking, just amplified through the uncanny creativity of the dreaming mind. As you hover now at sleep's threshold yourself, notice how your modern life still holds traces of this ancient wisdom. That problem that solved itself overnight, the dream that offered unexpected clarity, the morning inspiration that seemed to arrive from beyond your individual mind. These are whispers of your innate capacity for transpersonal knowing. The people arranged in that firelit spiral understood something. We're only rediscovering that human consciousness isn't confined to solitary skulls, that the boundaries between minds are more permeable than we imagine, and that some truths can only be accessed when we surrender the illusion of separateness. Let your breathing become the bridge between worlds now, slow inhalations drawing you deeper into shared consciousness. Measured exhalations releasing the need to control. The same neural pathways that lit their dream visions still fire beneath your closed eyelids. The same cosmic intelligence that guided their collective sleep still hums in the spaces between your thoughts. And as you finally surrender to the night, remember this final gift from the dream weavers. Your most important decisions may not be made by you alone, but by the vast, ancient, interconnected web of consciousness that dreams through all living things. The same great mind that turns the seasons, guides the migrations, and has been wisely navigating existence for millennia before you awoke to this moment, and will continue long after. Rest now, not as an isolated decision maker, but as a single cell in the dreaming body of the earth itself, knowing your choices ripple outward in ways you'll never comprehend. Trusting the same intelligence that grows flowers from seeds and turns caterpillars into butterflies will guide you too, if you simply allow yourself to be dreamed. The first pale light of dawn creeps across the sleeping forms of our imagined ancestors, and in this magical threshold between night and day, we discover the ultimate secret of their decision-making wisdom, what modern linguists might call the syntax of silence, but what these Stone Age sages knew as the unspoken language that flows beneath all human communication. Watch carefully now as they begin to stir, their waking movements slow and deliberate, eyelids fluttering as they cling to the last fragments of dreams. This is no ordinary awakening, but the most sacred phase of their decision-making process, the moment when night's visions meet day's clarity in perfect equilibrium. Contemporary neuroscience reveals why this state is so potent. The hypnopompic period, those precious minutes upon waking, features a unique blend of theta and alpha brain waves that fosters extraordinary creativity and insight. Yet modern life all but ignores this daily gift of expanded consciousness. Imagine how this practice evolved over generations. Early humans noted solutions often came not during active hunting or gathering, nor in deep sleep, but in those amber moments when sleep's grip first loosens. They observed how animals would pause upon waking to assess their environment before moving, stretching limbs, testing scents, listening intently. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call liminal harvesting, developing sophisticated methods to gather wisdom from the fertile borderlands of consciousness. A hunter would whisper his question to the evening fire, then upon waking, immediately note which direction his body instinctively wanted to face. Gatherers would sleep with seeds in their palms, interpreting how the seeds had rearranged overnight as messages about where to forage. Even children were taught to speak their first words upon waking before fully opening their eyes, as these utterances were believed to carry special prophetic weight. Now witness their most profound morning ritual, dew mirror. When facing decisions of great consequence, selected members would rise before dawn and position themselves near water sources. As daylight grew, they'd study how dew formed on particular leaves or stones, believing these patterns reflected answers received during dreaming. A spiderweb heavy with droplets might signal abundant game to the west. Dew collecting in curved leaf veins could indicate optimal travel routes. Modern pattern recognition research suggests they weren't entirely mistaken. Our brains do detect meaningful configurations in random stimuli, and morning light's angle makes water droplets act as natural prisms, revealing subtle environmental data. The clan's best decisions often emerged not from debate, but from comparing these dawn observations. What the hunter saw in the meadow's dew, what the elder noticed in tree sap flows, what children reported about insect movements at first light. Consider how they handled decisions where emotions threatened to cloud judgment. Modern people might attempt objectivity or seek outside opinions. Our ancestors had something more elegant, the shadow test. At dawn's first light, the conflicted person would stand with their back to the rising sun, while others observed their shadow's interaction with the landscape. Did it merge harmoniously with tree shadows or clash with the terrain? Did morning birds cross the shadow's path without alarm? These subtle signs were considered more reliable than human opinions, as nature's responses couldn't be swayed by personal bias. Anthropological records show similar practices existed across continents, using the unbiased natural world as a mirror for human dilemmas. As you linger in your own waking threshold now, notice how your morning mind works differently than your daytime consciousness. That brilliant idea that evaporates by breakfast, the sudden certainty about a lingering problem. The name you couldn't recall last night now perfectly clear. These are your hypnopompic wisdom channels, still functioning beneath modern life's noise. The people moving slowly through the dawn misunderstood something we've largely forgotten, that some truths can only be heard in whispers, that the most reliable compass often points clearest when we're not trying so hard to navigate. Let your breathing match the rhythm of their morning movements. Unhurried inhalations drawing in the day's first gifts, patient exhalations releasing all need for immediate answers. The same neural pathways that guided their dawn wisdom still spark within your slowly waking brain. The same cosmic intelligence that spoke through patterns and bird flights still murmurs in your half-remembered dreams. And as full wakefulness claims you, carry this final gift from the threshold dwellers. Your wisest choices may come not from determined analysis, but from attentive receptivity in those sacred moments when night's wisdom hasn't yet yielded to day's demands. When you're not quite here nor there, but perfectly positioned between worlds to hear the universe whisper its secrets. Here, in the quiet communion of dawn, we find the ultimate simplicity our ancestors mastered, that life's most important answers rarely come shouted, but breathed. Not seized, but received. And that sometimes the most powerful act of decision making is simply remembering how to listen. The morning sun now climbs higher, its golden rays filtering through the trees as we arrive at the most unexpectedly profound dimension of ancient decision-making, what modern ecop psychologists might call metacognition, but what our ancestors knew simply as listening to the green wisdom of plants. Observe carefully as the clan members move through the awakening forest, their fingertips brushing against bark and leaves with deliberate reverence. This isn't mere foraging, but a sophisticated interspecies communication ritual where decisions emerge from silent dialogues with the botanical world. Contemporary research now confirms what they intuited. Plants possess complex systems of electrical signaling, chemical communication, and even acoustic perception that some scientists describe as a form of plant thinking. The people of this Stone Age camp didn't just use plants. They thought with them, allowing the forest itself to participate in their choices. Imagine how this practice developed over generations. Early humans noticed that certain trees seemed to thrive near optimal campsites, that medicinal plants grew most abundantly along safe paths, that the shapes of leaves and roots often mirrored useful tools and strategies. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call vegetal literacy, the ability to read botanical patterns as a decision-making guide. A hunter might study how vine tendrils spiral to predict animal movements. Gatherers interpreted mushroom growth patterns as maps to underground water sources. Even children learned that rubbing certain leaves together created sounds mimicking animal warnings. An early form of bioacoustic intelligence. Modern studies validate their observations. Plants do respond to environmental stresses with measurable electrical impulses, and mycorrhizal networks form intricate underground communication systems often called the Wood Wide Web. Now witness their most sacred plant ritual, the whispering canopy. When facing decisions affecting generations, they wouldn't retreat to human-only councils. Instead, they'd select a massive, ancient tree and spend 3 days and nights in its presence, sleeping beneath its boughs, eating only what grew within its shade, observing how light filtered through its leaves at different hours. The elder would press an ear to the trunk, not just listening for insect activity, a modern forester's trick, but for what they called the slow voice. Patterns in the creaking wood that aligned with their own heartbeat during moments of clarity. Contemporary dendrochronology reveals trees do record environmental data in growth rings with astonishing precision. Perhaps these Stone Age sages were accessing similar information through tactile vibration. By the ritual's end, the group would emerge with decisions that seemed to account for variables no human could have calculated. When to migrate based on coming weather patterns, where to establish winter shelters to avoid unseen dangers. Consider how they handled moral dilemmas that divided the group. Modern societies might vote or defer to authorities. Our ancestors had something more nuanced. The sap test. They'd select 2 saplings of the same age and species, planting them in specially prepared pits where each represented a possible path forward. Over weeks, they'd care for both equally while observing subtle differences. Which leaves unfurled first, which bent more gracefully in wind, which attracted more pollinators. The tree that thrived most robustly wasn't considered a winner, but a biological indicator of which choice best aligned with life's fundamental patterns. Modern controlled experiments have shown plants do respond differently to human intention and emotional states. Perhaps these ancient arboreal oracles were tapping into similar interspecies sensitivity. As you lie in bed between sleep and waking, notice how your own body still responds to plant wisdom. That inexplicable calm in ancient forests, the burst of creativity near flowering plants, the way certain scents trigger forgotten memories. These are your innate phytocognitive channels still functioning. The people moving through that sun-dappled grove understood something we're only rediscovering. That intelligence isn't confined to animal brains, that the green world holds millennia of adaptive wisdom, and that some answers can't be forced through human logic, but must be ground slowly in collaboration with the more than human world. Let your breathing sync with the imagined rhythm of the forest now, inhaling the oxygen given by trees, exhaling the carbon dioxide they need. The same chlorophyllic intelligence that guided their footsteps still surrounds you in every houseplant, every blade of grass, every ancient tree outside your window. And as you prepare to rise into your day, carry this final gift from the plant whisperers. Your toughest decisions may not require more human thinking, but deeper listening. Not analysis, but photosynthesis. Because after 3 billion years of life on Earth, the plants have learned things our young human minds are only beginning to grasp. Here, in the quiet communion of leaf and light, we find the ultimate lesson from our ancestors, that wisdom grows not through force but through connection, that the best choices often come not from thinking harder, but from growing wiser, and that sometimes the most powerful question isn't, what should I do? But, what would the forest do? Rest now, not as separate from the green world, but as one leaf among billions in Earth's great breathing canopy. The sun now stands at its zenith, pouring liquid gold through the forest canopy as we uncover the most mysterious yet universal aspect of ancient decision-making. What modern physicists might term acoustic archaeology. but what our ancestors experienced as the hidden songs woven into the very landscape. Watch intently as the clan gathers in a sunlit clearing where peculiar rock formations rise from the earth like frozen music. These are no ordinary stones. They're the great, singing stones of their territory, carefully positioned by glaciers millennia ago to create natural sound chambers. When struck gently at specific points with smooth river rocks, each monolith produces distinct harmonic tones that seem to vibrate through bone and blood as much as through air. Modern cymatics research confirms what they intuited. Sound waves can imprint invisible patterns in matter, and certain frequencies alter brainwave states to enhance intuition and group cohesion. Imagine how this practice evolved over generations. Early humans noticed how particular caves amplified voices in uncanny ways, how water flowing through certain rock formations created haunting melodies, how standing between two cliffs at dawn could make whispers carry for miles. They discovered that some decisions made near roaring waterfalls felt different than those made in silent snowfields, that children learned faster when lessons were sung rather than spoken, that disputes resolved more peacefully when mediated with drum rhythms matching resting heart rates. Gradually they cultivated what we might now call sonic geography, the art of using landscape acoustics to shape collective consciousness. Archaeoacoustics research now validates their practices. Neolithic sites like Stonehenge and Hal Saflieni Hypogeum show precise sound, wave manipulation properties, while indigenous traditions worldwide retain sonic mapping techniques lost to modern civilization. Now witness their most profound sound ritual, the lithic choir. When facing decisions affecting 7 generations, they wouldn't debate around a fire. Instead, they'd position the entire group within the singing stones, natural amphitheater at solar noon, when the sun's angle created perfect acoustic conditions. The elder would begin by humming the dilemma's core question, not in words but in pure tone, allowing the stones to transform and amplify the vibration. Others would join at prescribed intervals, some drumming on hollow logs, others rubbing notched sticks, children adding high-pitched whistles through bird-bone flutes. For hours they'd weave this sonic tapestry, not as music but as living mathematics, the frequencies literally rearranging their brainwaves into states of hyper-receptive awareness. Modern biofield science suggests they were accessing what we now call Schumann resonances, the Earth's natural electromagnetic frequencies that synchronize human neural activity. When the final tones faded, the decision would often emerge with crystalline clarity, as if the landscape itself had spoken through vibration. Consider how they handled emergencies requiring instant consensus. Modern first responders rely on protocols and chain of command. Our ancestors had something more elegant, the pulse alignment. At the first sign of danger, whoever noticed it would initiate a specific rhythmic clap pattern that spread through the group like neural firing. Within minutes, everyone's heartbeat and breathing would synchronize to this tempo, creating what we'd now call a group mind. Contemporary studies of firefighter teams and military units show similar spontaneous synchronization in crisis. Our ancestors simply cultivated this as an art form. The hunter spotting a predator wouldn't shout warnings, but click 2 stones in a sequence that immediately repositioned the entire group into optimal defensive formation without a single word exchanged. As you linger in that drowsy state between sleep and waking, notice how your own body remains wired for sonic wisdom. That song that pops unbidden into your mind carrying unexpected answers. The way ocean waves or rainfall settles your thoughts. The visceral power of a loved one's laughter. These are your ancient acoustic channels still open. The people standing in that sunlit stone circle understood something, were only rediscovering that air vibrations predate language, that the earth itself hums with guidance, and that some truths can only be heard when we stop listening with ears and start feeling with our entire being. Let your breathing become the first sacred vibration, inhaling the same molecules their songs once shaped, exhaling frequencies that still ripple through time. The same physics that made their stones sing now governs every sound in your world, from birdsong to traffic noise to the subtle hum of your sleeping electronics. And as you prepare to rise into your day, carry this final gift from the sonic elders. Your most important decisions may not come through thinking at all, but through resonance. When at last you stop struggling to decide, and instead become still enough to hear the universe whispering your name in tones no air can hear, but every cell can feel. Here, in the silent spaces between sounds, we find the ultimate truth our ancestors mastered, that you don't need to choose so much as tune, that every decision is really just coming into harmony with a song that began long before you and will continue long after, and that the right path isn't something you see with eyes or grasp with hands, but something that vibrates through you with the undeniable certainty of a struck bell ringing clear across millennia. Rest now, not in silence, but in the great eternal chord that holds all wisdom, all time, all possibility, waiting only for you to listen. The afternoon sun slants through the trees now, casting elongated shadows that seem to connect earth and sky as we enter the most enigmatic realm of ancient decision-making, what modern anthropologists might call lithic consciousness, but what our ancestors experienced as the living memory of stone. Observe with reverence as the clan gathers around an unusual outcropping of banded iron formation, its rust red and silver, gray layers telling a story older than humanity itself. These are no ordinary rocks. They're the remembering stones that witnessed epochs before the first human foot touched soil. Their iron, rich veins pulsing faintly with Earth's magnetic field. Contemporary geomagnetic research confirms what they intuited. Certain mineral formations do interact with planetary forces in ways that can subtly influence biological systems, including human brain activity and decision-making processes. Imagine how this practice developed over millennia. Early humans noticed that some rock formations seemed to speak to them, not with words, but with a quiet knowing that settled in their bones. They discovered that sleeping against certain stones produced unusually vivid dreams, that tracing fingers along mineral veins could induce trance states, that placing palms on weathered boulders sometimes imparted sudden clarity. Gradually, they cultivated what we might now call geological attunement, the ability to use Earth's crystalline structures as cognitive aids. Modern experiments with paramagnetic basalt and piezoelectric quartz validate aspects of their practice. These minerals do generate subtle electromagnetic fields that affect neural functioning. But our ancestors took this further, developing entire decision-making rituals around sacred stones that served, in essence, as the Earth's hard drives. Ancient repositories of wisdom waiting to be accessed. Now witness their most profound stone ritual, the Veen reading. When facing decisions that would echo across generations, they wouldn't rely solely on human debate. Instead, they'd select 3 keepers, an elder, a teenager, and a young child, to spend a night lying bare, skinned against the banded iron formation, their bodies aligned along its mineral strakes. The elder's spine would press against stone layers, formed during Earth's youth. The teen's heart positioned over iron deposits rich with oxygen from the great oxidation event. The child's forehead touching crystalline quartz formed when continents first collided. Modern neuroscience might explain this as multimodal sensory integration, the stone's tactile input combining with geomagnetic influences to induce extraordinary states of insight. By dawn, the 3 would share their experiences, not as separate visions but as facets of a single geological dream, revealing paths forward that accounted for timescales no human mind could grasp alone. Consider how they handled decisions requiring perspectives beyond human lifespans. Modern planners might consult historical records or climate models. Our ancestors had something more immediate, the Granite Council. They'd pose their question aloud to a carefully selected boulder that had witnessed centuries unchanged, then press their ears to its pitted surface while children drummed softly on nearby stones. The specific harmonics created would make the rock vibrate faintly. What they believed were its answers. But what acoustical geology confirms are indeed measurable resonance patterns carrying information about the stone's composition and history. More remarkably, participants often reported receiving coherent insights during this ritual, perhaps because the combination of vibration, geomagnetic fields, and intentional focus accessed non-ordinary states of consciousness where time itself felt fluid. As you hover now between sleep and waking, notice how your own body remembers this mineral wisdom. That inexplicable calm when leaning against sun-warmed rock, the grounding sensation of holding a smooth stone during stress, the déjà vu sometimes triggered by particular geological formations. These are your innate lithic connections still functioning. The people gathered around that iron outcropping understood something we're only rediscovering. That stones aren't inert objects but slow, steady witnesses to deep time, that the same iron flowing in your blood once coursed through primeval seas before being captured in these very rocks, and that some choices require perspectives only the patient earth can provide. Let your breathing sync with geological time now, each inhalation drawing in mineral wisdom accumulated over eras, each exhalation releasing human haste. The same atoms that formed these ancient stones now compose your resting body. The same electromagnetic fields that guided their rituals still pulse through your bedroom, subtly influencing your own bioelectric systems. And as sleep pulls you deeper, carry this final gift from the stone keepers: your toughest decisions may not require more human thinking, but deeper remembering. Not analysis, but alignment with the enduring wisdom of a planet that has already weathered countless transformations and knows, in its crystalline heart, how to endure. Here, at the boundary between flesh and stone, we find the ultimate lesson from our ancestors, that true wisdom comes not from thinking outside the box, but from thinking outside the clock. That the best choices often emerge when we stop measuring in hours and start contemplating in epochs, and that sometimes the most powerful question isn't, what should I do today? But what would make sense 10,000 summers from now? Rest now, not as a fleeting mortal, but as the latest temporary configuration of atoms that have existed since Earth's fiery birth, knowing you're held, always, in the unshakable memory of stone.